Hello, hello, everyone. Thank you, everyone, for joining us for Sales or Engineer, Play to Your Strengths with Duston Littlefield. My name is Robin Mercado, and I'm the Inside Sales Development Representative at Consensus, and I'm going to be your moderator for today's session, if I could speak. DEMOFEST is presented by Consensus. Consensus is intelligent demo automation software that really helps to scale pre-sales with interactive video demos. You can learn more at goconsensus.com or view the automated micro demo at the link in the Docs tab on the right of your screen. Consensus is very proud to provide this event for free to all attendees. However, we would like to invite each of you to donate to our company's humanitarian organizations. You can learn a little bit more about this and donate by visiting the DemoFest Gives Back booth in our virtual expo hall in the Booths tab, or at the link in the Docs tab on the right of your screen as well. We also invite you to join us in our DemoFest community on Discord. Our community is where you can connect with speakers, get exclusive access to content and events, and really where the conversation will continue long after the DemoFest event has ended. And you can join that community again at the link in the Docs tab. Of course, we encourage you to participate in today's sessions. On the right of your screen, on the right of your console, you'll see a few ways to engage with us throughout the session. The chat function will allow you to engage with us as well as some of the other attendees. And then throughout the session, you may see a few polls. You may see some questions pop up. We really encourage you to participate in that, as your feedback is really important to us as well. And our speaker will be taking questions from the audience at the end of our session, but we encourage you to ask questions at any time through the Q&A box. If you happen to see a question asked in that Q&A box that you would like answered yourself, you can just upvote it to prioritize it. If at any time you're having any technical difficulties, you can head to the gear icon on the bottom of your screen. And right there, you'll see a help document to kind of help troubleshoot some common issues. And now I'd like to introduce our speaker. Duston Littlefield stumbled into pre-sales from marketing as a BDR almost 6 years ago and hasn't looked back since. He transitioned from being an individual contributor to team leader several years ago. He is a Sales Engineer Leadership Institute certified black belt as of March of 2022. And for the last year, he's been a leader of SE leaders, helping Sovos customers globally solve tax for good. And with that, I will turn the rest of the time over to you, Dustin.
All right. Thanks, Robin. All right, there we go. Thanks, everyone. So as Robin mentioned, today we're going to talk about sales or engineer and how we play to our strengths within that framework, given that we play both roles within our function as whatever your particular title within pre-sales is. So for our agenda today, 1, 2, 3, nice and simple. We're going to talk about some of the considerations that go with understanding whether or not you or a particular situation might lead towards, being more on the sales side of the scale or more on the engineer side of the scale. We'll talk about some examples and some stories to look at traits or actions that might help either you identify where someone else is on the scale, if you're looking at your teammates, or if you're a leader looking at the individuals on your team, or if you're looking internally at yourself to understand, okay, Dustin says there's a scale, where do I fall on the scale? And then we'll also talk about some things, some actions that we can do if you want to take a look at this deeper to be able to understand where you fall on the scale or where you might want to lean towards. As Robin mentioned, I do intend on leaving time at the end for any Q&A or back and forth. So if you do have any questions, comments, challenges, you learn nothing in a room surrounded by people that agree with you. So if you do have concerns or thoughts about anything that I'm presenting, please do bring it up and we can have a healthy discourse on it. But we will get towards those at the end. Okay, so The title of the presentation is Sales or Engineer, but I do want to call out that our job is to be both. We can't be 100% of one or the other in any situation because it leads into different behaviors, and the engineers already exist and have their function, and the sales reps or sellers exist and have their function. Now, I'm also going to call out that when I say sales, I do not necessarily mean more friendly. And when I say engineer, I do not necessarily mean more introverted or more intelligent. Okay, I'm not playing into the stereotypes. These are just different ways to go about the function that we all have. So for today's conversation, we're going to use Jamie and Julie as some characters for our story. There is going to be a train metaphor or analogy all throughout today's presentation. So even if you learn nothing else, you might even learn something about how trains function and operate out in the real world. So Jamie on the far left is going to play the role of more of our sales engineer. She's loved trains since she was a kid, rode them all the time with her family, ended up becoming a train conductor, learning the train and its functions through about 10, 12 years of experience, and has now decided to move into the sales engineer function. And then Julie on the right went the engineering route, got her degree in it, has worked behind the scenes and on the different pieces of the trains, but now both of them are at the same company, both sales engineers on the same team, and we'll look at how each of them might operate a little bit differently from each other. Okay. So some of the considerations. What matters? What can impact where someone falls on a particular scale? First, plain and simple, is the company you work for. Depending on the expectations of the sales engineers at your organization and the role and function that they play. Okay, so I know some organizations have sales engineers that are only there for the technical resource. They show up, they demonstrate the value of the product, and they get into the weeds because the products are typically technical or granular enough that you just need somebody who can come in and understand how things work behind the scenes and focus and be an expert at that. I've talked to other organizations where the term sales engineer and account manager could be interchangeable. Their sales engineers are calling customers, generating leads and opportunities, working through the entire scoping process, demonstrating and providing solutions, and then even post signature, they're working on, onboarding, implementation, ongoing customer success offerings and operations. Also depends on your offering. Now, continuing with the train motif, a lot of our customers, if they came to us and said, I want to train, a lot of us probably wish that it was as simple as saying, okay, here's a train. There's no explanation needed. You can look at it and see that it's a train. It's got wheels. It moves. There's different cars. It's nice and simple. Customers would like this. Sales reps would typically like this. But it's often not really this simple, is it? It's why we exist. It's why we have a function to do. So it is our job to look at the software or whatever your product is on the outside, because that's what your customers see first. Okay. Now, on the outside, could use words like traditional, reliable, old, maybe a little slower, maybe clunky. Okay. Or you could have an offering that gets attributed words like fast, sleek, automated, electronic. Okay. But it's also our job to know the inside. And on the inside of that first train, everything that you need to do to make that offering function, to make that train go and do what it needs to do, it's a handful of gauges and a couple of valves. Simple. It's clean. You're able to troubleshoot far more easily. There's only so many things that can actually break. The image on the right, this is the electrical wiring diagram for making sure that the windows go up and down on that. Okay, so it's our job to know it all, inside, outside, okay, because you also run into things like, where is the train going? What are your customers' actual goals? There's been a lot of different sessions at DEMOFEST this year that have talked about how to scope the role that we play, negotiating through that, the difference between a sales rep and sales engineer, but even digging into some of the details to understand our customers and which of our offerings, or whether or not a particular offering is going to be a good fit for them, depending on where your train's going. Even the electricity running that train on the right, the sleek, fast, automated one, might come from a power plant that burns the same fuel type that powers the train on the left, or could have a more modern energy source like nuclear power. Me personally, I spent 6 years on a nuclear powered aircraft carrier for the US Navy, and I know different people around different areas of the globe have very different opinions about nuclear power. Okay, so understanding all of that, it may not even be about your product or offering, but the manner in which your product or offering is powered, leveraged, maintained. Your customer may have concerns, and the sales reps are bringing their pre-sales resources in to help give that confidence and that trust to their customers to make sure that we are providing them a solution that is going to meet, ideally, all of their goals. Doesn't happen every time, but at least as many as we can, and giving them peace of mind that there is a solution for the problems they're looking to solve. And it's our job to carry all of that. It's not an easy job. I love it, but there's no concern about whether it's easy. Now, how do we balance all this? Okay, so in just a second, I'm going to start playing a video about what balancing this kind of conversation can look like, as mostly an entertaining or humorous aspect. So enjoy what a sales engineer can look like when trying to balance both business and technical operations when talking to a customer.
Here at Automation World Headquarters, research has been proceeding to develop a line of automation product that establishes new standards for quality, technological leadership, and operating excellence. With customer success as our primary focus, work has been proceeding on the crudely conceived idea of an instrument that would not only provide inverse reactive current for use in unilateral phase detractors, but would also be capable of automatically synchronizing cardinal gram meters. Such an instrument, comprised of Dodge gears and bearings, Reliant electric motors, Allen Bradley controls, and all monitored by Rockwell software, is Rockwell Automation's retroencabulator. Now, basically, the only new principle involved is that instead of power being generated by the relative motion of conductors and fluxes, it's produced by the modial interaction of magnetoreluctance and capacitive diractance. The original machine had a base plate of prefamulated amulite surmounted by a malleable logarithmic casing in such a way that the two spurving bearings were in a direct line with a panametric fan. The lineup consisted simply of 6 hydrocoptic Marsal vanes, so fitted to the ambifacient lunar wane shaft that side fumbling was effectively prevented. The main winding was of the normal Lotus O deltoid type, placed in panendermic semi-boloid slots of the stator. Every 7th conductor being connected by a non-reversible Tremi pipe to the differential girdle spring on the up end of the gram meters. Moreover, whenever fluorescent score motion is required, it may also be employed in conjunction with a drawn reciprocation dingle arm to reduce sinusoidal depleneration. The retroencabulator has now reached a high level of development, and it's being successfully used in the operation of Milford Trunnions. It's available soon wherever Rockwell Automation products are sold.
Okay. So the name of that video, you can do a search for either Techno Babble or the Rockwell Encabulator. So feel free to throw in the chat, what were some of the things that you noticed about the presentation that individual gave? Would you say they were more sales? Did they go too far into engineer to be able to, try and get across certain points to their customers? Okay, so we got a lot of jargon. Joel's confused every time more that he sees it. I agree. Every time I also pick up another word that I didn't catch the first time, in the weeds. Okay, so you'll notice toward it. Yep, no one can follow all those details. It's a great point, Chris. So with that, it is important for us to keep in mind that, again, we play both sides of this coin. We have to understand the technology that we are talking about, but also ensure that our customer is able to understand and follow along with what we are discussing and the value that it's going to provide to them. So we do have to constantly maintain both sides of that. Okay, so with that, what are some other things that this depends on? Your sales partner. Okay, a lot of times who you're on a call with can impact whether or not a sales engineer goes more towards the sales side of the tracks or the engineer side of the tracks, to be able to make sure that usually at least somebody on the call is doing the sales stuff. Most SEs are quota-based, commissioned. We are here to help sales, but making sure that you're working with your partner in crime on the call or any interaction with the customer, even if it's how do we draft an email response or an RFP, making sure that we are trying to get all of the points across that we need to for both sides of the coin. So another example, those that are movie buffs like myself, guys, sometimes someone who's an engineer, more engineer, might say, okay, what's our next move? They're looking for that more sales-driven person to be able to balance and say, okay, here's the game plan. Here's how I plan to go about this. The conductor or your salesperson, this can happen with salespeople or some of your more sales-driven sales engineers, to be able to, or to say, just go ahead and back up. Now, you can see the reaction at the bottom of the screen that this particular statement got. And the reason for that, for those of you that don't know, is that trains don't have rear view mirrors. So backing a train up, while feasible, possible, not usually something that some of us that know the behind the scenes and all of the risks and all of the items to take into account, not always that comfortable with. Okay. Now, the other big item that it depends on is you. Okay. Now, maybe you're listening to the presentation and you already know, or are just realizing, or maybe you made this decision years ago. Okay. Maybe you're making it as you listen to the presentation real time. Okay. That's all good. It comes down to where you are in your career, some of the different aspects that, or some of the different other considerations that apply to your current situations or future situations. The one thing I will call out, this is not a one-time thing. It is an ongoing discussion either with your fellow teammates, your boss, yourself, those that know you and can help identify some of these tendencies and where they do work and where maybe a change or a tweak might be better, might be needed. Okay, so to me personally, I made this decision years ago. When I first sat down and thought about, what do I want my image or reputation to be? What about this job gets me out of bed? So now some that know me a little more personally would say that the decision was made for me years ago because I was raised by a career salesperson. So I was pretty much learning negotiation tactics before I learned how to tie my own shoes. So being able to identify, that probably set me on a path more towards the sales side of things. But again, it is a constantly shifting track. Okay. I picture this image, these tracks, as an SE's brain, not only over the course of their career or a particular year, month, week, day. This could be what it looks like on a single call. You could change tracks and say, okay, I need to put my sales hat on. I need to put my engineer hat on, depending on, even on a single call, something like who's asking. Is it a technical, technology individual? Is it more of a business individual that's asking the question that might determine whether the answer needs to be from a more of an engineer persona or more of a sales persona? What level are those individuals at within their organization? What do they care about? Are they at a user level? They're going to be in the software, caring about how it's going to directly impact their life, their day-to-day? Or are they a little more high level and they just want to make sure that they have organizational visibility? Okay, can determine how a question gets answered or even how a question to those individuals gets asked based on which track is necessary based on the individuals that you're talking to. Okay, and the other way to look at this is how much detail is required in the answer. Is it a situation where you need to go to the level that the gentleman in the video we watched earlier went to? And all right, here's how all of this works. Here's what all of this does. Or would a simple, yep, that's how it works, would that suffice? Knowing your audience, knowing yourself, knowing your offering is what's going to help determine which track your brain might go down for any particular part of the conversation. It also depends on the verbiage of the answer, which usually depends on the verbiage of the question. Do you need to use a lot of big words because that's what the person who asks the question is asking you? Or do we keep it, simple, tight, clean to be able to, get the customer the information they're looking for from a resource that they trust? Okay. And then one more. At the end of the day, all that matters is credibility to yourself and your company. For those of you that were on Lori Payne's opening keynote, you heard the comments, or the statistic, 3% of people trust someone that's a salesperson. So guess what? A lot of that trust and that credibility for us, our offering, our company, falls to the pre-sales resources or the sales engineers. So it's our job to focus on making sure that however we present ourselves, whether it's more sales, more engineer, at the end of the day, we're giving credibility to ourselves and our organization. Okay. Now, Lori also used the quote, people buy from people they like. And I'm not going to say that that's no longer true, but it is less the focus, especially now with some of the research that's shown by buying digitally. For anyone that saw Garen Hess's keynote this morning, it's more people buy from people they trust, and they want to be able to trust, and they want to, do this. And that's one of the major motivations from what I've seen and heard that lead to people doing more research themselves and only spending that, what was the number, 17% of an actual buying cycle or project with the salespeople that are part of the project. Okay. Now, at the end of the day, whether they like you, whether they trust you, this one I would hold to with 100% certainty. People buy what they find valuable. Okay. Even just me in my own personal life. There's stuff that I could buy. There's stuff that I would like to buy. There's people that I trust. There's people that I like, but I buy what I find valuable. And it's our job to make sure that the customers understand the value of ourselves, our offering, working with our organization, and how we go about presenting ourselves and interacting with customers, and how we go about all of that is going to impact whether or not they like us, whether or not they trust us, and most importantly, whether or not what they find that we have to be valuable. Okay. All right. Research shows about halfway through a presentation is when everybody's attention starts to drop off. So I'm going to do a little break and talk about the guy that's been talking at you for the last 30 minutes. We'll go through it quickly, but a little bit of my history. Again, I've been in pre-sales for the last several years. I don't see myself doing anything else anytime soon. I love this job. I love the complexity. I love all the conversations that we get to have about what we do. I am ex-military, and I worked on a nuclear-powered aircraft carrier for the United States Navy for about 6 years. As Robin mentioned in my intro, I am a certified black belt from the Sales Engineer Leadership Institute. This is an amazing program put on by Stephen Morse and Justin McManus. If anybody is interested, I'm more than happy to provide the details. There are sessions for leaders as well as individual contributors. I cannot suggest the value that you get from this, to be able to look at the things that we deal with as pre-sales, specific to leading and operating within the very often ambiguous lines of what we do and all of the different aspects, and how to look at that and put pre-sales at the front of the value to an organization. I don't just work. I do have a family. That's a picture of me, my wife, and my 4-year-old. I am going to use this picture as blackmail for a couple of his, first girlfriends, for the eye roll that they might get. We did just we went on our first family vacation to Legoland. We're a big Lego family. If anybody sees the sets behind me, I'm not necessarily a car guy, but I am a big Lego fan. So we went out there, and then there's one more just because I think he's too stinking cute. Okay. So that's a little bit about me. So let's look at some examples. So remember Jamie and Julie. Okay, so we're coming back to that again. Jamie is more of our sales engineer. She started as a conductor. Julie is the engineer leaning individual. They're both SEs now. They're both working at the same team, same company. Okay, so some of the things that Jamie focuses on is business partners. She's much more likely to reach out to a business partner for assistance on a particular topic rather than holding all that information in her head herself. Okay, and she focuses on leveraging those relationships so that she can pull them into opportunities or deals as necessary to help give that customer even more trust or paint credibility for the organization. Okay. She also tends to look more for opportunities to negotiate. If anybody watched John Kerr's session yesterday, we are always negotiating internally, externally, within our own teams, with our selling partners. And the sales engineer is more likely to jump into those conversations. She looks at everything as a presentation. Everything is an opportunity to present herself, her offerings, her organization, her team in the best light possible. And she puts a lot of energy and effort into making sure that everything gets presented helpfully the way that it should be. Okay. And she's also extremely fast to rapport. Customers like her. She's able to build trust quickly because she'll focus on some of the other items related to the relationship building with customers or even other internal business partners to be able to do it. Now, I said at the beginning, I am not saying that Jamie is nicer than Julie. Okay. One of the lines that my team has heard me use before, and I tell all of the sellers that I interact with at the beginning, our SEs are here to help. Okay. Now, we are not necessarily here to help because we are all genuinely nice people. I'm here to help for two very selfish reasons. One, you make more money, I make more money. That's me personally, how I'm motivated. The second is if a seller doesn't make more money, we have to start over with the next one. Okay. So, that's where you can look at some of these items. Okay. Now, Julie very much focuses on her own personal knowledge. She wants to be the one that knows all the answers so that if the customers are asking questions, she's there. She knows it. She's giving that trust. She's giving that credibility, and it's all coming from her. And she spends a lot of time outside of customer calls learning and digging in further into all of the different offerings to make sure that she understands all the little pieces and widgets and abstract use cases to ensure that she knows how her customers are going to benefit from this the most. Secondly, she's got a favorite quote of scope, don't be a dope. Okay. She puts a very large emphasis on making sure that every conversation, every offering is scoped out to the highest level degree to ensure that no stone was left unturned with her customers' projects. She also, before getting into any project or any call, really wants to account for every tangent, every turn. What questions could that customer ask me? If they ask me that question, how would I answer? If they ask me about this functionality, if they ask me about that roadmap item, they want to be supremely prepared for any way that a customer call or even internal interaction could go. Okay. She's also very more likely to use the lingo or jargon of her more technical customers, individuals. Okay. So she's more likely to start using terms that, will resound with the customers to be able to ensure that, she's speaking to them at their level and they know that she knows what she's talking about to give herself that trust and credibility. Okay. So, question for the group, feel free to throw anything into the session chat. Where do you find yourself on this scale? Is there anything in this that you've seen in the past? Is this a brand new topic to you? Any thoughts, questions, again, from the beginning, challenges that you've seen with, a sales engineer leaning more towards the sales side of the job or more towards the engineer side of the job? Okay. Deal says he's leaning towards the engineer side. Deal also, thank you for sending the link to the SE leadership workshops into the chat. Entry goes. Makes a good point. I lean towards more sales engineer, but would love to ideally be a hybrid of both. Absolutely. We can't be 100% of one or the other. It has to be a mix. Okay. called out that it depends on the products that all determine whether or not he's more sales or engineer, or whether they, sorry, may not be. Okay. So again, at the end of the day, it's a scale. It is a sliding scale, but I have found that this framework can help determine and remove some of the ambiguity about how we interact, how we operate to be able to get the job done. Okay. So it's all great theory, Dustin, but what are some things that we can actually do to understand where we might fall on this scale, or to make sure that we are, not leaning too heavily towards one or the other based on the situation? So Lori Payne called out Clifton Strength Finders in her sessions. I am a big fan of Clifton Strength Finders. I've done almost every assessment that I can. My top 5 strengths. So for those of you that are unfamiliar with Clifton Strength Finders, it's an assessment put on by Gallup that you can go through, asks you a bunch of questions, and is able to crank out, here are, out of 34, here are the top strengths that you have. And for the most part, they're the adjectives that can be used to describe yourself. So for, example, analytical, you search for reasons and causes. You have the ability to think about all the factors that might affect a situation. Deliberative, you take serious care in making sure that you're making the best decision or choices. You have a tendency to anticipate a lot of obstacles. Learner, always learning, always looking for more information. Relator is about relationships with others, and in some cases, being able to see, being able to take that same mentality and applying it towards topics, and being able to take a big, broad, complex topic and relating it down to something simpler, so that those who aren't experts like we are in our different offerings or focuses to be able to see the value of it. And then achiever, I like achievements. I like checking things off of my list and working from project to project, goal to goal. Okay. So now, how I used these, I actually used these 5 to get my position as a sales engineer. From being a BDR, I walked into the interview and said, all right, my 5 strengths are, I'm going to analyze all the information. Give me a little bit of time, but I promise you're going to get the best decision out of me, and I'm going to look at all the aspects. I always want to be learning and understanding and bringing on new information. I can relate people and topics together, and I'm very goal oriented, and I want to run through and continue achieving different aspects. And then I looked at the interviewer and said, what else do you want in a sales engineer? Which leads into that 6th strength of self-assurance. I'm very confident. I trust my gut. Okay. But one of the other things, so you can either do this assessment yourself. One of the things that I did when I was leading a team of individual contributors is we all did this as a team, as a group, and everybody went through and found what their top 5 were. And then we sat down and spent a whole day talking about which strengths we had in common, which strengths were only one person on the team had, to be able to understand better how we all work together and leverage not only our own personal strengths, but our strengths as a team and a leadership group, to make sure that we were doing the best that we could for our organization, our sellers that we supported, and the opportunities that we worked. Okay. So one of the things you can do is that assessment. The other, talk to other SEs. There's an SE at Sovos, the company I'm currently at, that, they and I came up through the ranks together, if you will. And he and I have always fallen on different sides of this coin. Now, over the years, we've both, I would say, become very good hybrids of each side. We can move to and from in a smooth, fluid motion. But talk about this with your team, other SEs, on the Discord after the event is over. Okay, because really what it comes down to is, again, you learn nothing in a room full of people that agree with you. So go and ask somebody that does it differently than you. Hey, why do you do that way? What leads you to be able to function like that in that situation? Okay. I'm a big fan of podcasts. This is not a complete list, but for anyone who's not aware, there are pre-sales specific podcasts. I personally very much enjoy them. You know, a lot of them started just a handful of years ago, so they are still fairly new to the podcast world, but a lot of them will get you a lot of great content on this topic and many others. I'm also an avid reader, books, audiobooks. Again, this is not a complete list, but if you're looking for some pre-sales specific material, Pre-Sales Collective has their summer reading list. Consensus, who put on DEMOFEST, thank you, has their pre-sales reading list. And then I also found some good options on Goodreads. Okay, so anyone who's interested, you can either Google all of these, take a screenshot, or if anybody wants to reach out, I'm happy to share the books and podcasts that I've listened to over the years on this topic to make sure that we are maintaining both sides of this scale, both sales and both engineer. So we got about 10-15 minutes left before the next session starts. I see Robin coming back on. Does anybody have any questions that they want to throw into the Q&A?
Box, and we can kind of go through them. Thank you, Dustin, for that awesome presentation. And that video had my head spinning too. I was like, what?
Most of those words are not actual. It's not, no system actually does any of those things. It's just technobabble nonsense.
Right.
All right.
So we have a question. If you're not naturally a technical person or are entering a new space, how do you combat the constant feeling that you're not going to be as technical as your peers?
Okay, it's a good question. Simple answer is patience. Okay, your peers didn't become experts overnight, and as long as you've got a good team, they don't expect you to do that either. Okay, now some of the things that, patience, give yourself some grace. Okay, but you should still take action to try and ramp up to be able to understand those things. And I've found that, a lot of sales engineers or pre-sales teams will have either internal training options. There are also a lot either on LinkedIn or through other courses, some free, some paid, to be able to to be able to work through those things. I know I've always put even time on my own calendar blocked off just for personal learning. I'm going to go in and I'm going to try to understand what's going on. One of my other favorite learning techniques for sales engineers, if you're just trying to learn more about the software, obviously this depends on whether or not you have your own environment, depending on the organization and their controls. But I found that the best way to learn a software is to go in and try and break it. Go in, click all the buttons, try to figure out what everything does. And when you get to a point where you can't go any further, reach out to one of those more technical individuals. Okay, there's also shadowing. listening to them on those calls to be able to get to the point where they are, to hear the conversations that they have, how they discuss different items. Okay, it's not, there's value in being proactive and teaching yourself. You'll never hear me say differently, but I will also call out, it doesn't always need to be just you. Leverage your other resources, leverage your teammates, leverage others within the organization. Reach out to the product team and say, hey, help me understand how this works. Okay, so to ask. That's how.
Absolutely.
Good question.
Next up, we have, how do you design and build a team with both the engineering and sales profiles?
Ooh.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So one is by having a conversation like this with them and getting their own take, doing your own assessment if you're the leader of that team, to be able to figure out, okay, who falls on the different sides of the scales, and then looking at a lot of those considerations. Some people would look at, okay, I need a healthy mix of each. So if you've got a team of 4, I need 2 of these, 2 of those. Okay. The other, but again, it depends on the company. It depends on the product. There are highly functioning teams that have 10 people that always lean more towards the engineer side. So it's about sitting down and doing an assessment on some of those considerations to figure out, okay, what is going to be the best look. But it's, I would also suggest, start with that strength finders, or a similar type of assessment. My preference has always been strength finders. It's reputable, it's based in science, but it is something that, it's not always free. So I also understand that limitation, but it's how I hope you consider that answered, because it's, it's one of those things that it takes sitting down and looking at it and deciding, like, okay, I'm going to look at my team from this standpoint. And it's not about putting people in boxes, but it's about understanding who you've got on their team, their strengths, and how their strengths can best be leveraged to make the team and the organization successful.
Absolutely. Next up, what do you suggest to speed up a sales engineer career?
Okay. That one's broad. Speed up a sales engineer's career. I could give the old cliche, act like you've got the job you want. So if you want to be the highest level individual contributor, start emulating some of the things that they do. If you want to move into leadership, start talking to individuals in leadership. I mean, that one's tough to give a concise answer to, not only because my team's laughing because they know that I'm always long-winded, but this one's tough to give a concise answer to, because it really depends on the organization you're looking at or you're working for. Because there are some that will say, okay, we promote by committee. There are some that have strong requirements on, here's the things to do for getting to this next rank. Me personally, I have seen SEs escalate their career, individual contributors and leaders that have been on both sides of these tracks. But I would say being able to do both, being able to show that you do have enough technical expertise to explain your product, assist sales, be a value add to the sale, but then also ensuring that the rest of the organization or whomever is involved in a career decision understands that you're also there for the betterment of the company, helping to drive sales, bring on new customers, bring on happy customers, avoiding scope creep. Okay, so but I would say it's really about understanding the organization that you're working at and their requirements. But then, I've seen both sides of this go just as fast through career progression as others.
Awesome. Last one, it seems, unless anybody else has any other questions to throw into the box. We have, I feel once you are an SE in an industry, you're stuck there. What would you say on how to come across as someone who would be comfortable in any industry?
Okay. All right, Robin, read that to me one more time.
I feel that once you're an SE in a particular industry, you're stuck there. What would you say to someone to be able to come across as someone who would be comfortable in any industry?
Okay. That's a good question.
Yeah, I kind of thought of that as like actors being typecasted. Like, how do you get out of the role of XYZ, you know?
Yep. So, okay. So I would say, okay, my first answer, the first thought that goes into my head is that is going to be, this is a massive generalization. It is going to be easier for those that lean towards the sales side. Because if you understand how to talk to customers, if you understand how to focus on value and build relationships quickly, internally and externally, what you are selling, that can be learned. I've seen SEs come from other industries, other organizations, even internally within the organizations. And I have always found that teaching the technical aspects can be easier than the sales aspect. Sales is mostly a psychology game. So I would say that I don't know that anyone's necessarily stuck. I mean, personally, I hope I'm not, because I'm in the tax industry. And while I love the complexity of tax, I don't want to talk about taxes for the rest of my life. But, that's where it might be, because it's, and even outside out this same side of my mouth, it's able to be, the technical aptitude can eliminate any concerns about the industry and the customer base. If you understand how a kind of, I'll use software as an example. If you understand how software works, you have on-premise, you have cloud or SaaS, you've got integrations, you've got buttons, you've got QA environments, dev, UAT or sandbox, and then live production environments, multi-threaded, multi-tenant, all of these terms. If you've got that, what business problem any particular software assists with for an industry, if it is something that's industry specific, or your organization is industry specific, you can still build on. But then it comes down to selling yourself, and this is why my first answer is build up the sales side. Because if you can sell yourself as someone who isn't stuck in an industry and wants to change, if you can sell that you're looking for that next challenge, you're looking for something different, then during any kind of interview or review process, you're going to be able to get somebody to understand that you're not stuck and you don't want to be stuck. These are good questions.
Yeah, absolutely. And definitely some good thoughts in the chat too. Awesome. Well, it looks like that was the last one.
Okay.
Let's see here.
Well,
yeah.
All right. Thank you,
Awesome.
everyone,
Of
very
course.
much.
If we could switch screen share real quick, Dustin. There we go. Perfect. Awesome. So again, thank you so much, Dustin, for that awesome presentation. We just want to remind everyone about our DemoFest game, where each session you attend and each session feedback survey you fill out gets you points to win some of our really awesome prizes. And we're very excited to be bringing DemoFest on the road again as DemoFest X. We had a great time in San Francisco in March, and we can't wait to bring the event to Dublin, London, and New York City later this year. You can register to join us at any of these events at demofest.com, which is also at the link in the Docs tab on the right of your screen. Of course, we encourage you to stop by our expo hall to visit our premier partners of DemoFest. Remember, there's no transfer of money involved in this event, so all of our partners here have really gone above and beyond to contribute to making this event as successful as it has been for all of us. So thank you all for joining us for Sales or Engineer, Play to Your Strengths. And thank you, Dustin, for that valuable insight and knowledge. Up on the screen are the upcoming sessions that you're automatically going to be pushed to the next session in your track. And you can switch tracks or sessions by toggling to the Agenda tab at the top left of your screen. And we'll see you soon.